Good afternoon. I'm Rona Free. I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs here at Eastern, and it's really a pleasure to be here today. This is, as I was walking over here, I realized that this is midway through what has been an ideal week for somebody who works or goes to school on a public liberal arts college campus. So last Friday, at the end of the workday, we went to the Student Center Theater to watch the streaming video of the men's basketball team playing the NCAA tournament. And then that was over at 10 after 7, which gave us just enough time to get down to the Harry Hope Theater to see the production of Thieves' Carnival, which was absolutely fantastic. And then last night, we had Laura Ling on campus, who I hope some of you got to see. She was one of the women who was captured in North Korea and was there for over 100 days before she was released with the assistance of President Bill Clinton. And then we have today, where we have some of the most outstanding graduates of Eastern here to talk to you. One of the interesting things about this group is that their histories from Eastern and their careers afterwards really reflect the growth and transformation of Eastern over the last half century, from primarily a teaching institution to one that's really a premier public liberal arts college. So it's wonderful to have them here today. I'm going to give you brief introductions to the 3 new Eastern Fellows, and then they're going to make remarks for about 10 or 12 minutes each, addressing in general some questions that they've been asked to talk about, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So I'm going to start down at the end. Carla Goodwin graduated from Eastern in 1969 with a bachelor's degree in elementary education. Although she started teaching, within a year she earned a master's in counseling psychology and then went on to obtain a PhD in human services. She built a private practice in Massachusetts, developed expertise in forensic psychology that led her to be a major contributor to the development of the state's policy on domestic abuse and child abuse and neglect. She serves as commissioner and chairman of the Massachusetts Disabled Persons Protection Commission, and as you will find if you Google her, is often quoted as an expert on issues of domestic and family violence. Next to Carla is Wendy Daily. They missed each other on campus by about 4 years. Wendy graduated in 1975 with a degree in psychology after working as an RN at Hartford Hospital. We were just talking about how when she was here, she would spend the day working as a nurse and then take classes here. One semester she completed 22 credits in one semester while working full-time as an RN. And one of her fondest memories of campus is sitting in the parking lot having a nap in her car. She earned her medical degree in pediatrics at the University of Louisville Medical School and is currently president and CEO of the Brownsboro Park Pediatrics Practice in Louisville. She's a principal investigator at a research clinic conducting trials on potential new drugs. Finally, Tim White graduated from Eastern in 1981 with a degree in earth science. He went from Eastern to the University of Kansas, and then from there to the Yale Peabody Museum of Natural History, where he's been ever since. Look at his publications. Shows that he's been a very prolific researcher and writer. He's got publications in the Journal of Paleontology and the Paleontological Society Special Publication Series. He's currently the Assistant Director for Collections and Operations, and for 2006 to 2008, he was President of the Society for the Preservation of Natural History Collections. So they are obviously a very distinguished group of graduates, and we'll work our way down the row. We should be done with the formal presentations in about a half an hour. And again, think of questions that you might have. What they're going to talk about are their career paths after leaving Eastern. They'll mention whether they had any mentors while they were here. They'll discuss their perspective on public liberal arts education that as they see it now at Eastern. And then they'll mention some challenges for graduates who may be moving into their fields now, and then they'll end up with a piece of career advice that they may have to share with you. So welcome to the three of you, and thank you for being here. Carla.
Thank you very much. When I'm introduced as distinguished, I don't feel that I own that honor. Distinguished is somebody very old, even though you think I'm old. I'm really not. I'm actually 23, but I'm in a different body. So, to discuss my career path, I think, for the essence of time and to provide everyone else with an opportunity, my career path, while it started as elementary education, really was formulated by doing many different things and taking many different opportunities that was provided to me, some serendipitously, some because I chose them, and it ended up in a career that I never knew existed, and I never knew of the excitement of that when I started off as a graduate from, at that time, Willimantic State College. I originally started with a degree in elementary education, and at my senior year, when I started my internship, I started at the Mansfield State Training School for the mentally retarded, as it was referred to in them days. I did an internship there, or practice teaching, and I totally did not like it. And I felt doomed that I had spent 3.5 years preparing for a major that I was not particularly enamored with in terms of being in a classroom, in a very small classroom. At that time, mental retarded citizens, the scope of learning disabilities was not known, so it was a very small clustered thing. So with my disheartened spirit, I approached the Dean of Women Students at that time. Her name was Betty Tipton, and I was quite downcast, and she said to me, "Well, you don't have to just follow what you thought. There's a world out there. Do what you like." And she said, "I noticed that you do well in counseling students in the dorm." I had worked as an RA in the dorm, and everybody would come to me with their problems. She encouraged me to get a fellowship at the University of Bridgeport and master's in counseling, and that was the start of learning right then and there that sometimes things that come your way you take advantage of. You don't know where it's going, but you just go along. Almost like when you're driving a car in a dark of night in a dark, lonely road, as Eckhart Tolle says, you go just as far as their headlights can see, and then you get to the end of the road and you didn't know you traveled there. My journey from an elementary school teacher to a forensic psychologist has been one in which allowed me to take on things such as becoming a guidance director, starting my own practice as a forensic psychologist, a clinical psychologist. I have people that work with me. I also have developed a niche in being a forensic psychologist, which is the blending of mental health and the law. Again, a new field that was started, and it became forensics. I'm sure you think of forensic as CSI and all those kinds of things, but forensic psychology is a blend of learning to evaluate people, events, circumstances in the mental health, in the legal, the medical, and sociological aspects to determine what makes people behave or have behaved in a certain way. I am now talking at the end of my career to you as to what I am. My journey getting there, as I said, has been doing the thing that will lead to you into our next question as to how a liberal thinking and critical thinking person has helped evolve and shape my career path. So I don't want to take too much time, so I'm going to turn that portion of the question over to my colleague, Wendy.
Okay, we talked about this among ourselves, and we decided we'd go through the questions one by one and then go back and do one by one again. So my career path after graduating from Eastern with a degree in psychology, plus I was already an RN, was to move to Arkansas with my husband at the time. He did a fellowship at the University of Arkansas, and a couple of things happened that made me feel like I could go on and become a doctor. I was working as a nurse and in a critical care unit, a cardiac care unit, and we had interns for the first time after I'd been there for a year, and suddenly I realized that maybe I could do what they're doing, because they don't seem like they know a whole lot more than I do. I'm sure they did, but I felt like I could probably do what they were doing. So I became a pre-med major, or post-grad. I did pre-med studies at the University of Arkansas. We then, at the 2.5 years later, moved to Louisville, and I was lucky enough to land a place at the University of Louisville in their medical school. Back then, medical school entrances were 25% women, 75% men. So it was very hard as a woman to get into medical school. I did my residency in Louisville. I worked at a public health clinic for 4 years. That was what paid my way through medical school. I had a public health scholarship. I don't even know if those are available right now, but it was an awesome thing for me. I then worked various places before I started my own practice in 1991. And my own practice has grown to 4 doctors. We have 13 employees plus the doctors. We see all types of children through college. We actually see our children through college. We do well child care, we do sick child care, and we'll take care of our kids through college because we know that they still need us for maybe medications and advice, since we know them better than anyone else. The other thing I do is research. About 12 years ago, I just happened to bump into somebody who was starting a research company, and I got on their website. They put me on their website as a pediatrician interested in research, and since then I've learned some amazing things and done some amazing things with vaccines. My most exciting thing was the H1N1 vaccine. Studies back before H1N1 became a routine vaccine, my office was contacted to study the vaccine by 2 different companies, which was just a thrill for me, because H1N1 was the 1918 flu. It was a very serious flu. It killed probably 60 million people worldwide. So to be able to develop that, help in the development of that vaccine, was an amazing experience. So that's what's happened to me since I graduated from Eastern. Tim.
Sure, thanks. Well, first, let me just congratulate Carla and Wendy as well. It's great to be here with you guys today, and I appreciate meeting you as well.
We feel the same way.
I took a very traditional academic route. After I graduated from Eastern, I went to the University of Kansas, at the time one of the best programs in the country for studying paleontology. Spent 3 years there, had a ball, got exposed to a lot of different topics and things that I hadn't been exposed to before, and somehow managed to find a position at the Yale Peabody Museum. Never thought I'd move back to Connecticut, thought I would go off and work in the oil industry, but somehow happened to see a job posting on a bulletin board, believe it or not the bulletin boards that you guys are familiar with today, but an old-fashioned bulletin board at a professional meeting that a curator of paleontology was, that a position was open at the Peabody Museum, applied, and lucky to get the position in 1983. I think I was all of 24 years old, and for 20 years I was the youngest person at the Peabody, and I'm still, believe it or not, one of the youngest people at the Peabody. While I was at Kansas, I took a great variety of geology courses. As I did here at Eastern, I took a great number of earth science courses. But somewhere along the line, I was lucky to get an internship in the Biodiversity Institute at KU, and it kind of opened my eyes to an entirely different world of museums. We see museums as cabinets of curiosity. We go to art museums and we love to look at paintings and sculptures. And for the most part, in most art museums, the majority of their collections are on display. But when you go to a natural history museum, you're lucky if 0.1% of any of their holdings are on display. And so you have to sit and wonder, if the Peabody has 13 million specimens and artifacts, what are they doing with, 12,900,000 of them? That's a lot of stuff, and why do they have it? And I was very fortunate to come along at a point when museums were starting to change. To be honest, it was an old boys club. If you were a professor of a certain discipline, you managed that collection. But the world was starting to change, and people were starting to see that these collections had far more use and value to them than just documenting a certain period of time or a certain geographic region. And people started to see their value for computational biology, for biodiversity informatics, if you're studying global change, environment, a lot of the things that we actually touched on here at Eastern in classes with people like Ray Smith and Mike Gable in the biology department, Barry Wolf, et cetera. But I hadn't really made that connection yet between the significance of collections between geological or paleontological collections and biology. And that wasn't until I really arrived at the Peabody Museum that I happened to stumble upon another Eastern grad. And our careers have evolved together for the last 28 years. He's a marine biologist. He's, believe it or not, he was just evacuated from a hotel down in Punta Arenas, Chile, where he was supposed to go off on a boat to the Antarctic. And it was through this association with Eric that we really started to, explore each other, but we also started to explore, our sciences. As a paleontologist, I was used to looking at fossils and only thinking about them as geological elements or geological entities. And Eric was only used to looking at marine organisms as, modern organisms. And it's when we started to realize that there was this strong overlap between organismal biology and paleontology that we both started to grow. And to me, I always thought that was probably one of the most interesting and significant parts of my career because, we both came at this from very traditional sciences, and we didn't really see the interdisciplinary nature of science. And, now it's there's a gentleman here who's interested in GIS, and there's great applications in every field that we're doing now in GIS, whether you're working in a museum, you're working in the medical industry, psychology, doesn't matter. I mean, there's some very broad applications to these subject matters. And so it was really largely through Eric and our friendship that we started to both evolve. And so I've always been grateful for that aspect of our careers. At some point, I unfortunately found that I had a role in administration and got moved into a central administrative role as director of collections. And, like a lot of you guys, I had a lot of jobs when I was in college. I worked on construction. And, hey, guess what? I'm now in charge of 250,000 square feet of the Peabody Museum and all of our associated facilities. And believe it or not, I draw on those days when I worked on construction just as much as I draw on my geological background. And I always find that just those are interesting paths, not things I ever expected I'd be doing. But suddenly, I have this large physical plant that I'm managing. And, I draw on those different experiences. So I'll pass it back.
Well, mindful that I learned today that Eastern Connecticut has been designated as the liberal arts college of all the 4 colleges here in Connecticut. So that was a shift of thinking about Eastern, and therefore a shift of thinking about the undergraduates that are here today, and that you are already going to be exposed to the benefits of liberal arts thinking, that is learning from different fields and learning parts of things in different fields. And I recognize that that is what has been a motivator and a driver for me in developing my field. Not having the designation of a liberal arts graduate, but I have learned to be a liberal thinking, liberal learning individual that ended up formulating my career paths. If you listened to the similarities that Wendy and Tim have indicated, you would hear things that they unknowingly or serendipitously learned from one field that they were in, or took information that Wendy did and developed a protocol for penicillin vaccinations. I myself continually learned along the way. One of the things that I think it was most endemic to my career path was I never knew that living and working is an evolving process. I thought once you got your degree and once you got your first position, I was trained, that's where you stayed, but it didn't work that way for me. You see, I wish somebody had told me when I was younger, or excuse me, your adults, that your life is going to get boring at times, your work is going to suck, and it's going to get boring, and it's not what you think it's going to be. So you can either collapse into the work, or you can make the work something different. You can make yourself different. You can learn from different fields. You can take as many opportunities within your field or take an opportunity from another field, and then you never know where it's going to lead. I, for example, found my best learning about myself in my field was from the areas such as music, travel, reading, conferences, did forensics. I did civic work, being my town selectman and school committee. I learned budgets. I learned how to form relationships with people. I did learning from all different areas, the things that you are able to do right now in a liberal arts college. I did this throughout my career path. I think the other thing that you will find that endemic to both, Tim mentioned it, having someone to mentor or be with you as you're going through your career that helps push you or formulates another area that you never knew. He had his colleague, Wendy has had hers, those interns at that hospital. I had mine. I started in the field of forensics, and I started with Henry Lee. Are you familiar with that name? The O.J. Simpson kind of guy. I went to a conference with him. I just fell in love with his ability to understand medical and forensics and things, and he was he was very instrumental in formulating my idea and love for forensics. Richard Gardner is another mentor that I had. In fact, he developed parental alienation syndrome. He used my cases as anecdotal information, and I worked and collaborated with him. So in terms of your benefits as a liberal, attending a liberal arts school, you have the opportunity right now to learn how to think from different fields, learn what different fields are, and then I have no idea where that thinking is going to lead you, but it will be the basis and the foundation for where you wish to develop a field of interest.
When I came to Eastern, I really wanted to be here. I wanted to learn. I came from a 3-year nursing program with a diploma, so I really had no college experience. It was a very sheltered life. I was allowed to take the college level equivalency program, and I tested out of 2 years of college, and then I was able to complete a degree in 2 years. I started out with biology, but it was too hard. I thought it was too hard. I thought it was really hard. So I switched to psychology because I thought it would be easier with my work schedule and everything. And I really wanted to learn. I loved every class that I took here. I loved my African history class. It was a small class with 8 people, and it was the very first time I ever had to do a really serious term paper on a country in Africa. And I learned study skills that I didn't even know I had. I learned to go to different libraries. I learned to research. You can do all that on the computer now. We had to physically trek ourselves to the library and look through the stacks and look through the index files and things like that. So I loved it here. In psychology, I learned the theory of self-actualization by Abraham Maslow. Be the best that you can be. Just self-actualize. Try it. If you don't make it, you won't have any regrets. If you don't try, that's worse than trying and failing. So that's the advice I would have, is just try everything. Don't ever think you can't do something, because you can.
And realize when you do that, you often liberate people around you.
Yes.
It's kind of an important part of that it
Yes.
forces other people to try things as well. Hey,
Exactly.
if you can do it, I can do it too.
Yes.
These are the things I think we've discovered. You know, as I said, I had a very traditional science background, and I often sat there and wondered, when I had to sign up for these core courses, why the heck am I taking a cultural anthropology class? Why am I taking an art history class? I'm a scientist. This is a waste. And, I thought my career would go off and I would earn a PhD and I'd be a professor at some university. And, but, the cards didn't exactly turn out that way. But, I ended up working in a natural history museum and had this chance to migrate through a career path into administration, where a year ago this week I was down in Peru returning a collection of Inca artifacts to the people of Peru and the president of the country, Alan Garcia. And this was a collection that Hiram Bingham made at Machu Picchu in 1911, 1912, 14, and 15. And for me, it was an incredible experience. We had spent 2 years negotiating this resolution with the country of Peru, and that was satisfying in many ways. We set up a research institution in Peru with another university, and so we have a nice collaboration going on with the University de San Antonio de Cusco. And but the thing that really kind of resonated to me was when I was sitting in a presidential motorcade, being escorted through the city of Lima for an hour and a half, being driven through a color guard with a 21-gun salute, where they literally rolled out a red carpet in front of the presidential palace. And I noticed the people that I was driving with, the general counsel for the country of Peru and the minister of foreign affairs, were both crying. I mean, this was just a deeply emotional moment for them, this sense of cultural patrimony. And, I had never put it together, how valuable those courses were at Eastern. Because all of a sudden, this just came, flushing back to me. I can remember sitting in those classes down in Schaefer, I think it was, and it took me back, and it just gave that a whole new, sense of purpose. And, we work in museums, we collect, we love to collect. I mean, that's why we work in museums. We love to go out in the field. For us, it's always an excuse to go down to the Caribbean, spend some time, drinking a little bit of rum and doing a lot of collecting and working hard. But, and we're not in the habit of wanting to give collections back. That's not really why we have museums. But when I sat there and I watched, people on the street crying, and when I realized my colleagues in this car, were crying, how deeply emotional this was to them, it gave me a whole different appreciation for my education. So I'll pass it back again. But I think you have to look at these things very open-minded, and, you have this chance to get a broad education. Don't miss it. You're going to be majors in different subjects and go out on a limb. I took a business management course. Again, I said, what the heck am I taking this for? But I got to have one course in this core area. Well, now I'm an administrator and I have 50 people that work in my area, and I spend every day looking at budgets and scratching my head trying to figure out how are we going to pay for this. I go back to that course that I took, 30 years ago, and I use those basic principles every day. And didn't have anything to do with geology or earth science, so.
I think Tim gives a good segue into things that were important. There are going to be courses that you're going to take or have taken, and professors that you will meet or have met that will become instrumental to you in ways that you do not know. Leo Schneiderman, Dr. Schneiderman, professor of psychology here at Eastern, he passed away recently. One of his courses was Theories of Personality, and I was fascinated by that, understanding various personalities as explained by the psychological thinkers Jung and Freud, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that enlightened, and that sparked in me an interest inherently of understanding what people are, why they do things the way they do, and what makes them tick. I didn't realize that I was gathering all this information to do the forensic work that I do now. And for me personally, it is a continually daily thing of what do I do the way I do things, why do I do them, how do I think critically, how do I take different data points and see them different all the time. You see, it's not going to be what you choose to do that's going to be the problem, is when you get there, is to reinvent yourself in your career all the time. I have absolutely no doubt you'll find something to do that you want, but to do it and to stay with it and to turn it into something different will be constantly challenging yourself to take the same data points, the same box that you're in, and to work them differently. That, to me, was what I learned here at Eastern, and I didn't know I was being taught that by that one person, the mentoring of Betty Tipton, who said, you could do what you want. And as Wendy says, for a woman to hear that, don't forget I was back in the ages of the suffragettes, so for us to be freed from those stereotypic ideas really enlightened. And so I think that's been what my mantra has been all along. And the best career advice that I'm going to give you is don't put yourself in a box. Do anything and everything that, well, within reason, that comes your way. You will never know how it will shape you. Economics is a big thing for graduates. How to make a living, how to support yourself, how to deal with debt. While that may be your driving force, if that is so, recognize that income streams are going to come from various ways, various sources, and in many different ways.
I would like to go on to the next question about challenges. What do I think are the current challenges in the field of medicine? And basically, of course, finances are a big issue because somebody has to pay for your medical education if that's what you decide to do. However, investing in yourself is the best thing you can do. If you would invest in a home, what's more important than a home? Yourself. You're more important than that home. And invest in yourself. Take advantage of all the opportunities. I think also I felt that I was prepared at every step for the next step by my background, by what I did. I would always say, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to be an intern. Am I going to know everything that an intern needs to do? Yes, my medical school studies prepared me to be an intern. Then I would look at the residents who were ahead of me thinking, I'll never know as much as them. Then I was a resident, but I realized that I had other people to rely on, attending physicians. Then one day I was in charge of the emergency room, but darned, I had surgery residents and I had all kinds of subspecialties that I could call on when I needed help. So don't be afraid to use a little help from your friends or rely on people that you meet along the way to help you make decisions. You don't have to be there. You're not out there alone making these decisions. There's other people who will help you. You just have to make a call. The other thing you have to do is you have to swallow your pride sometimes. People make mistakes. I make mistakes. You can either get defensive about making mistakes, or you can just say, I'm sorry, it was my fault. It won't happen again. And you'd be surprised how well that works.
That's so true.
It's really true.
You still make mistakes?
Unfortunately,
I do.
I still make mistakes.
Yeah, me too.
It's very challenging in medicine right now to try to get reimbursement for the work that you do. You work very hard, you work long hours. it's a challenge. The paperwork is a challenge. Just when you think you know the rules change, and you have to adapt. So my advice would be to just adapt, constantly adapt to the new technology, to what's going on. Everything changes at all times. We're never the same. And I'll let Tim take over.
Yeah, I think you guys have hit a couple nails on the head here. I love Carla's point about, don't be afraid to, in a sense, reinvent yourself. This is 2012. In 1981, we never thought we would have the technology that we have today. For God's sakes, I was watching Star Trek and wishing I had a flip phone. Flip phone's old news, guys, right? If you don't have your iPhone or Droid, you're yesterday's news. But I think that's an important thing, is that, the world continues to evolve, and you have to continue to learn. And don't be afraid to, if some new opportunity comes along, you have to, you want to make sure you always are putting yourself in position to take advantage of opportunities. I always hate it when people say, oh, you were so lucky. And I'm thinking lucky I won't say it. I've just put myself in position for good things to happen. And, I've seized those opportunities, and every one of you guys can do the same thing. You cannot be shy, because, that door sometimes is only open for a few seconds. You've got to go for it, and don't be afraid or ashamed of, promoting yourself. What are some of the big challenges, opportunities for people wanting to work in I guess I have a hard time explaining what I am. My background's in geology. I've done a lot of research in biodiversity informatics. I'm an administrator. In some sense, maybe I've just gone up the corporate ladder, if there is one, in an academic museum. And I try to pass that on to colleagues that work in a lot of our collections, or people in other universities and museums. I think museums are great places to work, and if you can be lucky enough to work at a university, then you have that opportunity to continue to learn, continue to challenge yourself. It's the best thing about it is there's always lectures and opportunities coming along that just make you think about things in a different light. To me, I think that's an incredibly rewarding experience. We haven't talked a lot about being green or sustainable. I know Eastern here, I think the science building is a gold level green building, right? I think. And is it silver? So more and more universities and government facilities, are looking at green technology, and so it's something we have to all be acutely aware of and look for opportunities to take advantage of that. But also see how you fit into that. As we all build our lives. I built a house 10 years ago. I kick myself for not making it more of a green house. Now we're thinking of selling it and building something different. So I think there's lots of things out there for you to think about and consider. But the door is only open sometimes for a few seconds. Seize that moment.
So, I want to start off by thanking our three panelists for being so open and offering your insights. Thank you very much. The same thing happens every year when we do this. The panelists, without, I think, any coordination ahead of time, end up echoing each other. And this time, it's interesting. I think there were really 4 points that they made in common. One was, don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Another was that they realized how often they had to apply something that they learned in one discipline to a problem that they were confronted with in another discipline. A third was the importance of networking. And then the fourth was seizing opportunities. Tim talked about the bulletin board that he happened to look at, where he saw the job posting that ended up being resulting in his career. Wendy talked about having her information posted on a website that led to doing wonderful research on vaccines for H1N1. And Carla talked about just happening to attend a conference where Henry Lee was also there, and led to her working in forensic psychology. So very important commonalities in their experiences. So we have a couple of minutes for questions now. Anybody have a question? Dr. Hyatt?
So one of the things that didn't come up, but I think it's inherent probably in all three of your backgrounds, is sort of the fifth common element is work ethic. And not always working hard at things that you realize might be important later could be a thing. So to what extent does the sort of the harder I work, the luckier I get come into play?
Yeah, I think it's just about putting, it helps you put yourself in position. You know, God knows my wife and I are, workaholics. I mean, any given week we're working 65 to 70 hours sitting on the couch answering emails at 10 o'clock at night, and sometimes we wonder if we have a life. Yeah, I think that's, it's kind of an interesting point, Drew. I just believe in, I guess it's the old Protestant ethic of, you work hard, you'll be rewarded. And it puts you in those positions to make the right choices. So you've got to take some risk, and sometimes that risk is, working your butt off.
Yeah, I work about with paperwork and court reports. Some weeks I work 7 days a week, and I work probably at my minimum 60 hours a week, maximum 80. In fact, when I go to Florida for 2 months, I go, stop, and I have nothing to do, and it scares me, because I've been so used to working. But what happens is, when you like your work, those hours don't seem like work.
Exactly. Make your vocation a vacation so that you feel like when you're going to work, you're on vacation, you're having fun. Have a positive attitude. Show up with a positive attitude every day. And we have a saying in my office, if maybe 90 patients a day might go through the office. If only one complains, that's a good day, 89 didn't. So,
It's a great day.
yeah, so
We have a saying in our offices when my other colleagues, if they come in and they say, I can't stand this person, we say, time to take a break, because you're not liking what you're doing and you're not doing a good job in doing what you're doing. And when you get that critical mass of just too much, I think that work ethic is something that these young people already have if they're here. And it doesn't go away. You just develop it and fine-tune it. You work smarter and not harder, and you develop an ethic that you like it, and that helps.
Thank you.
And you don't look at it as work.
No.
It just becomes pleasure, and it's part of who you are, right?
Right.
Another question? I have one quick one because I know that a lot of students have to go to the next class. A couple of you talked about networking, and I think students hear a lot about how you should network, but how do they actually do that? You pick up and make a call, pick up the phone and make a call. Who do they actually call? How do students do networking?
Well, for me, networking, I didn't know that was what I was doing, okay? So networking is taking advantage, as Tim and Wendy said, taking advantage of situations that put you in contact with people that it may be that person at the coffee shop, but it also may be the professor that you meet or somebody else. And that person, use that person when you're thinking and develop a relationship. So they remember Carla Goodwin, forensic psychologist or chairman of Disabled Persons Protection Commission, and they get to call me and I get to call them. So networking is not a thing, it's a being. It's the way you operate. It's all about developing relationships.
Thank you.
everybody has a story. And like Carla said, whether it's the person you see every day at a coffee shop, get to know people, because people, once you get to know people and they like you, they talk to you about other people, and then before you know it, opportunities start flowing in. It's just talking to people and getting to know them.
Yeah, and I think it's being persistent. I mean, I had a young lady that sent me a resume every year for 10 years, you know, and I would get it, and I'd look at it and say, oh, well, isn't that interesting? She's been at Mystic Seaport running their hands-on thing with their discovery room. That's cool. The next year she would send it, and I'm constantly watching, and after a while it was like curiosity. Was she going to stay in touch? Well, we finally hired her, and she runs the digitization center at Yale's West Campus, and in large part just because, you know, she didn't give up. She kept sending in that resume. I think she said I had met her once at some conference, and unfortunately, you know, I didn't put the name with the resume, but she kept doing it.
One of my partners actually followed me around for 10 years on her spring breaks or during the summer. She would come and spend a week at my office, no pay, just follow me around. And one of her girlfriends even followed me around one time too. Now she's my partner. But it was 10 years. I never thought she'd be my partner. I never thought she'd go into pediatrics. She just wanted to see what I did. And she's an awesome person, and she's a great partner.
All right, well, I think our time is up. I know students have to get to class. Thank you so much for coming. You're wonderful role models. Thank you.